Please welcome Yaya Fuentes for our prelude. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. You are welcome here and you are needed. Whatever your religious background or lack of one, wherever you are from and whomever you love, you are accepted here in friendship and love. We are so happy to welcome again one of our favorite guest ministers, the Reverend Tania Márquez. Tania is an ordained UU minister who currently serves as hospital chaplain in San Diego, California. Originally from Jalisco, Mexico, she grew up in Tijuana and then migrated to the United States after high school. As a Mexican American, she was pressured to assimilate to Anglo culture. Her ministry is influenced by her migrant experience, as well as her experience as a fronteriza, someone who embodies two languages and cultures and moves smoothly between them. And today we are graced with the music of Yaya Fuentes. She was born in southern Chile and describes herself as a female world traveler, indigenous peoples activist, sound therapist, composer, and singing teacher. Her music is the result of the compilation of techniques and styles in various countries of America and Europe. She has been a practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism for 23 years. San Miguel de Allende is located on the land of the Guamare people of the Chichimeca Confederation, while the surrounding municipality is primarily territory of the Otomi and Nawa peoples. Migrants from Canada and the US are very grateful to make our home in a community resulting from the mixed cultural influences of the indigenous peoples, the Spanish, and later the Criollos. After the service, those of you on Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with each other for discussion with our speaker, Rev Tania, and Rev Tom. And those who are here at the Aldea can join us for cookies and coffee over at the side. Now, if we have any visitors here today, please stand so we can see who you are and invite you personally to come over to coffee hour after. Wow. Take a look, everyone, and grab them after. Thank you. And if we have any visitors on Zoom, please write your name in the chat box, and that way we can greet you personally after the service as well. Our flowers today were provided by Ellie Goodwin, and if you would like to provide flowers one Sunday, please see our head usher, Diana Weiner. Where are you, Diana? Here is Diana waving at the back. So that's who you can see if you'd like to bring flowers. We do record our Sunday services, so to access any of our past services, you can just go to our website, UUFSMA.org, and then on the top, click on Services, and in the drop-down menu, click Previous, and you'll have access to many of them. And while you're there, please check out all the events and the small groups that you're welcome to join, as well as how you could become a member if you wish. And now, please welcome Rev Tania.
Good morning, buenos dias. Let us light our chalice with these words. Come, pilgrim, traveler, ven, peregrino, viajante. Come to this space made sacred by our presence, by our deepest longings, our truest ideals. Ven a este espacio consagrado por nuestra presencia, nuestros deseos más profundos, nuestros ideales más verdaderos. Pause here for a moment. Devote this hour to the caring of your spirit, the caring of your mind. Detente aquí por un momento. Dedica esta hora al cuidado de tu espíritu, al cuidado de tu mente. Bring your whole self. Leave nothing behind. Open your heart and receive this offering. Tráete todo tu ser, No dejes nada atrás. Abre tu corazón y recibe esta ofrenda. Come, let us worship together. Vengan, celebremos juntos.
And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit and to join together in reciting this fellowship's unique covenant, the promise we make to each other about how we will relate to each other in the community and to the larger world. I will lead us in English, and then Diana Amaya will lead us in Spanish. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
You can be seated. Self-Compassion by James Cruz. My friend and I snickered the first time we heard the meditation teacher, a grown man, call himself honey, with a hand placed over his heart to illustrate how we too might become more gentle with ourselves and our runaway minds. It's been years since we sat with legs twisted on cushions, holding back our laughter. But today, I found myself crouched on the floor again, not meditating exactly, but agreeing to be still, saying honey to myself. Each time I thought about my husband splayed on the couch with aching joints and fever from a tick bite. Would he ever recover? Or considered the threat of more wildfires, the possible collapse of the Gulf Stream. Then remembered that in a few more minutes, I'd have to climb down to the cellar and empty the bucket I placed beneath a leaky pipe that can't be fixed until next week. How long do any of us really have before the body begins to break down and empty its mysteries into the air? Oh, honey, I said, for once, without a trace of irony or a blush of shame, the touch of my own hand on my chest, like that of a stranger, oddly comforting in spite of the facts. Please remain seated and join in a traditional Buddhist meditation, our hymn, filled with loving kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Tom Rossiello, the minister of this fellowship. And today I'm coming to you again from our lake cottage in Massachusetts, where once again we are expecting rain today. Even though I'm presently not in San Miguel, and whether you're there or not, if you should need pastoral care or the assistance from a minister, I'm still available. Please simply email me and we can set up a time to talk. You should also know that our care team is also available to be of assistance. All the contact information for me and them are on the fellowship's website, UUFSMA.org. We now enter into a very sacred time in our service, a time when members and friends share the joys, the sorrows, and the concerns that they are experiencing with their community. If you have a sorrow or joy or concern you'd like shared in a future service, please email it to me and I or another person will share it in the upcoming services. If you're on Zoom and if you wish to share today, you may now do so by typing your joy, sorrow, or concern into the chat column. Some folks may also have written a joy, sorrow, or concern on a card as they came into the service this morning at the Aldea. Those will be shared after I complete the ones that I have. As we share each joy and concern, a candle will be lit at the Aldea, indicating that that joy, sorrow, or concern is held in all of our hearts this morning. We light our first candle once again this week. This week again, various communities across the United States, there have been horrible mass shootings, several in conjunction with July 4th celebrations. Gun violence is at epidemic proportions and is causing incredible harm, not just to victims and their families, but to the very fabric of American society. This is a candle of commitment to support sensible gun control legislation that has proven time and again to save lives. Today, we hold several members of our fellowship, some physically here in San Miguel and others part of our community through Zoom, in our thoughts and prayers. Our first candle is for Diane Daly, who continues to suffer from debilitating back pain, which greatly affects what she's able to do. We're sending her our healing thoughts and support with the hope that she'll be able to find relief from that pain soon. Our second candle is for Hillary Torola. This morning, she went to Querétaro for some tests relating to a blood clot, and the good news is that she does not need to have an immediate procedure, but she will have to continue with medical treatment and follow-up. We hold her as she continues on this journey in our thoughts and prayers and offer her our support. You know, one of the wonderful things about our community is the support that we're able to bring each other through our various small groups. I know Hillary has the support of her women's group, Mis Hermanas, and so do two others of its members, Joan Wolfe and Donna Sherbrooks. And we now light a candle for each of them as they continue on their journey of treatment and recovery in the U.S. We also light a candle for Liz Stone, who is home from the hospital, doing much better every day and being well cared for. Please send Liz your healing thoughts and prayers. Many of you who've been to my home in San Miguel have met our wonderful maid and helper, Amparo. Last week, her daughter-in-law and young grandchild were in a very serious car accident. The daughter-in-law has several broken ribs and other injuries, but is recovering. The young child remains in intensive care at Mac Hospital with head injuries, and the prognosis is unclear. Please hold them too in your thoughts and prayers. And now we go to Kathy at the Aldea for any joy, sorrows, and concerns that may have been submitted on cards or on Zoom this morning.
We have a joy from John H., who describes himself as a prodigal son who had been a member here 4 years ago and has and on the board and has come back and rejoined. Welcome. And we also have a candle of concern from Diana Amaya. Auntie Estefana Rosas died of liver failure last night at the age of 67. She died peacefully, surrounded by her 10 children and grandchildren. And I'll check the chat. No new ones in the chat, but lots of welcomes and greetings to each other. Back to Tom.
We again light our blue and yellow candle for all those who have lost loved ones, lost their lives, or been injured or displaced by the unjust and unprovoked war in the Ukraine. And we light a final candle for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns that are held deep in our hearts, but remain unspoken this morning. Let us carry with us these joys, sorrows, and concerns into a time of prayer or meditation or reflection guided by music, feeling the love of community and remembering that we are here for each other in good times and in bad. I invite you into this time guided by the music of Yaya. And during her playing, if you wish to come forward and light a candle for your own personal joy, sorrow, or concern, please, you are welcome to do so now.
from The Healing Time by Pesha Gertler. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again. When I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, I lift them one by one close to my heart and say, holy, holy. Finalmente, en mi camino hacia el sí, me tropiezo con todos los lugares donde dije no a mi vida. Todas las heridas desatendidas, las cicatrices rojas y moradas, esos jeroglíficos de dolor tallados en mi piel, mis huesos, esos mensajes escondidos que me mandan a la calle equivocada una y otra vez. Cuando los encuentro, las viejas heridas, los viejos errores, los levanto uno a uno cerca de mi corazón y digo, Santo, Santo. In her book, Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach speaks of the, quote, trance of unworthiness which so many of us live in. In my past work as a therapist and in my personal life, I've used a dialectical cognitive approach in dealing with the paralyzing guilt and shame that sometimes arise for all of us as we confront past choices we regret. I mean, for example, a time we remember wounding someone or doing something not in keeping with our values. The task is to first accept that what we did, as mortifying as it might be to ourselves, was the best we could do at that time in our life. Whatever we do is our best way of coping in that instant. Otherwise, we would have done something else. Accepting is not condoning. We can accept our past without guilt and simultaneously make a commitment to change. We can commit to learn from it and work to become capable of reacting in a better way in the future. Spanish poet Antonio Machado offers us this verse. Last night, as I was sleeping, I dreamt a blessed illusion that I had a beehive inside my heart, and the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from my old failures. Anoche cuando dormía, soñé, bendita ilusión, que una colmena tenía dentro de mi corazón y las doradas abejas iban fabricando en él, con las amarguras viejas, blanca cera y dulce miel. May we be this kind to ourselves. And now, Rev Tania.
I'm grateful to be able to be with you another Sunday. Thank you, San Miguel de Allende. Thank you, Yaya, for your wonderful music and voice. Thank you for your gifts. And Kathy, thank you for your wisdom. Just out of curiosity, I Googled self-compassion, and the results page said that there were 337 million results. I mean, that's a lot, but still less than if you search for self-esteem, self-love, or simply compassion. I also Googled those. I don't know why, that's just how my brain works sometimes. Before I begin, I invite you to think about how you would answer the following questions. And by the way, I will be doing this through my message, asking questions and inviting you to reflect briefly. But don't worry if answers don't come right away, or if you feel that more time is needed. Sometimes holding the question is all we can do, and that's okay. This is not a test. What does compassion mean to you? What makes it easy for you to be compassionate? What gets in the way of your compassion? These are questions that our patients in our spirituality groups get to discuss. Discussions are rich, interesting, insightful, and moving. But in every group, as soon as we start talking about self-compassion, all the fears, all the sense of unworthiness, all the doubts show up. So self-compassion has become one of my favorite topics to explore in spirituality groups and with individuals too. See, there are millions of results on Google, but self-compassion is still a difficult practice, often misunderstood, and for many, an unexplored terrain. This topic has been on my mind, especially since during one of my visits, I invited my patient to be compassionate with herself as she navigated her health challenges. She paused, she looked at me and asked, "How do I do that?" It was the first time someone asked me that question, but it wouldn't be the last. And it happens often with some of the words that we use often, but we assume that people understand what we're saying, that we make assumptions about people knowing what we mean when we say those words. So it made me pause, and I guided her through some practices as much as our short time together would allow. And I was aware that the depth of self-compassion cannot be fully explained in 20 minutes. And the same is true today. So this is a seed that I hope you will take, plant, water, and care for it moving forward. And as with many other words, the definition of compassion varies, but I will be using the definition and description used by Dr. Jennifer Mascaro, Associate Professor in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine at Emory University. In her article, The Science of Compassion, she states, compassion involves 1, awareness and awareness of another's suffering. 2, a benevolent emotional response to this suffering. And 3, a desire or motivation to help relieve the suffering. So compassion involves an awareness of another's suffering, a benevolent emotional response to this suffering, and a desire or motivation to help alleviate it. So I invite you to think about a time when someone showed you compassion. What comes to mind? What was it like for you to receive it? How did it impact you? And again, these questions are invitations so you can explore, rediscover, renew, and find the compassionate tools you already possess. Why is it so hard for most of us to be self-compassionate? Here are some thoughts. We have been trained to avoid mistakes in school, at work, in the communities and groups we are involved in. Many of us have based our sense of worth and value in the validation that we receive from others, in our ability to do things well. Plus, the only fully human experience we know is our own. We have a narrative of our life story that we have used to define ourselves. We think of ourselves as good people for the most part, and mistakes are often associated with flaws in character that are regularly translated in our minds as the opposite of being a good person. We know how much we have worked for what we value in our lives, but we also know our wounds, our past hurts, our mistakes, our shortcomings. If you are among those who are strong and independent, self-compassion may be perceived as a weakness or as being needy. We may also fear that self-compassion may lead us to complacency, self-pity, selfishness. But it can also be that we are not good at recognizing when we are suffering. And I am sure that there are many other reasons that you may know about. And I offer these examples that I've heard from people, not as judgments, because self-compassion is also to recognize the ways in which we have operated to survive, or the ways in which we have been acculturated to exist, and to say, yes, I see you, thank you. And to know that we can now, knowing what we know, choose otherwise. And I want to use Dr. Mascaro's definition to say then that self-compassion involves an awareness of your own suffering, a benevolent response to the suffering, and a motivation to help relieve the suffering. Well, you may say, Reverend Tania, I don't want to focus on myself, that's selfish. Or, well, I don't want to act like a victim or throw myself a pity party, you may think. An awareness of your own suffering. Self-compassion is not self-pity. While both pity and compassion involve seeing suffering, compassion recognizes the suffering as a common human experience, while pity sees suffering just as something that happens either to others or just to me. Pity may not move me to act or to be benevolent in my response to my suffering or the suffering of others. In fact, oftentimes, self-pity centers the suffering and exacerbates it. Compassion sees and connects to the suffering and looks for ways to alleviate it. And to the argument that self-compassion is selfish, let me offer you the words of Parker Palmer, who said, self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer others. Anyone we can listen to our true self and give the care it requires, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. So I would say that self-compassion is self-care, especially in critical times. What is a benevolent response? It is a response that seeks to soothe and not to harm. Can you think about a time when someone showed you compassion, or when you show someone compassion? Maybe a friend, a loved one, or even a stranger who was facing a difficult time. What did you do? How do you usually respond to the suffering of others? Most people know how to be caring and compassionate with others, but struggle to believe that they are worthy of that same level of care and compassion from and for themselves. Benevolent responses to your own suffering does not mean denial or lack of accountability, but it is about stopping the inner critic, the voice of self-shame, the thoughts of unworthiness. It is about not blowing the situation out of proportion, but to pause, to allow yourself to feel. to stop the self-judgment, and to tend to your own needs. A benevolent response recognizes your own humanity and both the beauty and the limitations that it represents. Self-compassion seeks to alleviate the suffering. When you offer compassion to others, when you witness their suffering, you may be aware that you cannot fix or change the situation for them, but you still reassure them that they are worthy of love and care. Like blood that rushes to the wound to heal it, so do you. You too are worthy of feeling the care that you give to others and to alleviate your own suffering, to reassure yourself, to give yourself a break, to remind yourself that your suffering is also part of being human and not just because you are you. Self-compassion is a muscle. The more you train it, the better you become at it. You want to build its memory so that when you face difficult times, they will know how to respond almost immediately. And the better you become at it, the more you will be able to share it with others. Oftentimes, our compassion is triggered when we recognize suffering of another with whom we share traits and identity. But we tend to lack compassion when the other person's experience is far from our own. But when you learn to recognize human suffering, your own or the others, as just that, your compassion will be boundless. And it is a tool that our aching and wounded world needs the most. And you can grow your compassion to connect also with the suffering of other species, of other beings, and of our environment. Compassion does not exist outside of ourselves. It begins within and it moves from the inside out. A compassionate you to yourself will also be compassionate to others. And isn't that the world we dream of building, where we are able to see and respond to the suffering in our world and help heal it? So no, I am not saying that all you need is self-compassion and your own ability to care for yourself without the need of others. What I'm saying is that this practice of self-compassion will help you recognize the invisible bonds that connects us to one another and to the world. And maybe you already have a self-compassion practice. Maybe you don't, but you know how to respond to your own suffering with compassion during difficult times. In any case, I want to share with you some ideas, some ways in which you can cultivate self-compassion in your daily life. James Cruz ends his poem saying, "Oh, honey," I said, for once without a trace of irony or blush or shame, the touch of my own hand on my chest, like that of a stranger, oddly comforting in spite of the facts. So my first suggestion to you is to find an endearing nickname for yourself. Call yourself something that brings you comfort. Háblense con cariño, talk to yourself tenderly. I once asked a person, if the divine has a name for you, what would it call you? Mija, this person responded without hesitation. Mija, an endearing word for many Mexicans, a word that encompasses care, love, and belonging. So find what would work for you and talk to yourself with kindness. I know it may sound silly or corny, but trust me, try speaking to yourself the way you speak to a loved one. And it may be just your own name, but say it gently with intention and love. Practice compassion meditation, like our loving kindness meditation. Yes, like the opening hymn today. You can sing it or you can recite it. Notice how it starts with the self, but it moves out to include others, if possible, everyone. Give yourself a few minutes, and do it as often as you can. Visualize yourself, those you love, and even those you don't know, as you send wishes for well-being. Practice saying affirmations to yourself. This is the opposite of self-loathing and self-criticism that only increase stress in your body. Affirmations, even if you don't believe them at first, can give you a new language and new ways of relating to yourself. The moment you become aware of your own suffering, name your feelings and normalize them. It is okay to be angry, to be sad, to be worried. It is part of being human. And along with that, breathe mindfully, pause and ask yourself, what do you need at that moment? And it has to be something that you can give yourself: a walk outside, a glass of water, a shower, silence, music. Listen to the need and give yourself exactly that. Now, if you have patterns that you have used in the past that have not been benevolent, start practicing or exploring new ones. Ask yourself, what would be both soothing and nourishing? Have one, two, or an entire playlist of songs that speak to you and that remind you to be compassionate with yourself. These are only some ideas, but also listen to your own wisdom. You are the expert in you. To know what you already know will fulfill your needs best, and do it with kindness. Be benevolent with yourselves and others. Lean into self-compassion. Not if, but for when you need it, because you will. The writer Will Durant, in his interpretation of Aristotle, wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." If you want to become a more compassionate person, practice. Practice it until it becomes part of who you are. Self-compassion also teaches us something about being human. Dear ones, you are worthy and deserving of the care and love you give others. Self-compassion is holy work. And I invite you to think, how can you give yourself some compassion today? What can you do today for yourself that is compassionate? May we learn to be kind and gentle with ourselves as with others. May it be so.
Thank you, Tania. This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with membership open to all who are in accordance with our principles. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, and we unconditionally welcome any and all of you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and moral beings. Our congregation is entirely self-governed by democratic process. And one of the privileges of our free religious tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of the congregation. Thank you.
De ti recibo, a ti te doy.
invite you to rise in body or spirit and join our voices together in song, hymn number 1007. It's not in your hymnal. There's a river flowing in my soul, and the words will appear on the video.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. River flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. Flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Flowing in my soul, yeah. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul. Flowing in my soul.
And so we extinguish our chalice with this blessing. This blessing has traveled far. It has moved through mountains and valleys, through all the seasons. It has shown up from time to time in the joyful presence of friends and loved ones, in the comforting presence of those who have held your pain, in the compassionate guidance of mentors, teachers, and guides. It's shown up in phone calls, emails, and texts. It shows in the eyes of children and the future they reflect, in the tireless work of those who dream incessantly a new world. It moves with the human spirit, eager to know, eager to feel, eager for wholeness. Show no resistance. Let this blessing come and rain on you. It has been looking for you. It is glad to have found you. Thank you.
Please remain seated as we welcome Yaya for our postlude.
It's a pleasure for me to make my music because my root Lama in my community always say me, do you have one talent? Yo, maybe yes. okay, maybe do you have one talent? This talent is the compassion with this world. Practice your talent. Thank you for your words, Tania. Thank you so much.